I was getting ready for school when I heard Aunt Queenie screech, "Punky Holloway, what are you doing?" I raced out to the hall, certain that Punky had been caught picking petunias or setting fire to a mattress. He was hot-footing it toward me with Aunt Queenie in pursuit. "What's the matter?" I yelped. "Go on," said Punky, darting at me. "What'd he do?" $12, shrieked Aunt Queenie. I spied the empty bottle in her hand. Shampoo! Punky had emptied her shampoo. $12 a bottle! Wasted! Down the drain! $6, I said meekly. What? $6. Punky only pours half of it out. Aunt Queenie covered her eyes with her hand. Finally, she looked at me and said, "You mean he does this all the time?" I nodded. Only the last half. "And just what other tricks might Punky have up his sleeve that you haven't warned me about?" "Matches," I squeaked. "Mom always hit the matches." "Well, I declare." "I just declare." Aunt Queenie turned and walked away, muttering about losing her mind. I walked to school hunched over, clutching grief to my chest as if it were a notebook. 9 days had passed since the accident, and this would be my first day back. As I traveled the unfamiliar path from Uncle Bert's house to Tangle Nook Junior High, the chilly October air stung my eyes and nostrils. All around me were trees in glorious shades of yellow, red, yellow, and orange. But I concentrated on the dead and dying leaves that dropped like tears before me, cluttering the sidewalk. The route that had been so scary when Punky and I slipped away in the dark had put on a cheerful, sunshiny face. A big jack-o'-lantern grinned from a window, even though Halloween was 3 weeks away. Doors banged open, then closed, as children left their homes for school. I heard mothers calling out last-minute instructions, their voice mingled with snatches of music from cartoons on TV. The farther I got from my uncle's ritzy neighborhood, the smaller and closer together the houses were, and the more kids I saw. Did the size of the house diminish in direct proportion to the number of people living there? I wondered, to keep my mind off agonizing thoughts that were nagging at my brain. Always before, there was a home to look forward to when school was over. Now, there was nothing. An empty house that Uncle Bert was putting up for sale. 1,000 memories going on the auction block, just like the roll-top desk Mom had wanted. Choking back a sob, I rammed my free hand into the pocket of my jeans jacket and discovered the package Whitland Walt had given me when I left his house. So much had happened, I'd forgotten all about it. I tore open the package and caught my breath. Inside, not more than 3 inches across, was a trumpeter's swan in flight. Its neck was a graceful line no bigger around than a matchstick, and feathers lay in perfect rows across its outstretched wings. Carefully, I lifted the swan from its packing. Underneath was a note from Walt that read, "Life is like an untouched block of wood. We can carve out a beautiful niche for ourselves, or we can leave it unused and unproductive on a shelf." I didn't know how Invisible Girl would go about carving out a niche for herself, but I suddenly wanted to carve a swan. Tears welled up in my eyes as I remembered Dad cutting out the swan shapes for me on our last night together. He thought I could handle the outstretched wings, and I wanted to turn around right this minute and prove to myself that I could. But Aunt Queenie would never allow me to miss more school. I put the swan back in the box and trudged on. "Hi, Velveeta!" Without meaning to, I had reached the Shacklefords' house on Magnolia Street. Bertie was sitting alone on the steps, her mop top tangled and her freckled cheeks rosy from the chill. She was wearing a sweater over her pajamas, but her feet were bare. Of course, she wouldn't be inside watching cartoons because her family didn't have a TV. "Hi, Bertie. What are you doing out here in the cold?" "Waiting." "Waiting for what?" "The baby." "The new baby? Did your mom go to the hospital?" "No." Bertie laughed as she picked up the whistle that dangled from her neck. "Oh, baby. Mama says I can't blow this till he wakes up." A sudden burst of resentment gnawed at me. Bertie's father, locked away in a jail cell, had left her with nothing more to look forward to than blowing a whistle. Why hadn't he died in place of Dad? "How are you?" Bertie said. "What?" "I said, I'm going to be a hobo for Halloween. How about you?" Bertie's eager, upturned face made me ashamed of myself. How could I have wished her or anybody's father dead? God didn't make trade-offs. When he was ready for new souls, zap, he took the ones he wanted. "How about you?" Bertie asked for the third time. I hadn't thought about it. "You don't want to go trick-or-treating?" "No, I'm too old." The truth was, at the farm, I hadn't had to worry about Halloween. "That's what Tree says," Bertie replied, and her face took a pout. "But he's not too old to eat my candy." I smiled at Bertie and told her goodbye. She had taken my mind off my troubles for a little while. When I got to school, though, depression wrapped around me like a cloak. The hallway was gnawing. The hallway was crawling with kids laughing and talking. It was just a routine day to them, but to me, nothing would ever be routine again. I stared into my locker, unable to remember what class I had first hour. Then Cindy Martin smiled at me, and I spied her English book. English. As I sorted through my books to find the right one, Avenel came up to me and said, "Hi." "Hi," I mumbled. My chest hurt and my eyes burned, and I didn't want to talk to her or anybody else. Avenel stood staring at her worn-out tennis shoes. I knew she was thinking she should say something about my parents, and I waited for the same tired words I'd heard so many times. "Your folks didn't suffer," and on, with meaningless phrases that were supposed to lessen my grief. Instead, she said simply, "I'm sorry about your mom and dad." I nodded and closed my locker. It was strange, but I wasn't invisible that day. All my teachers made a point to speak to me personally, and most said my grades were high enough that I didn't have to worry about making up work. Brad Miller offered to sharpen my pencil in English class. Cindy Martin asked me to pass her nail polish across the aisle to Debbie Blackwell. Debbie said she was going to let her hair grow out long like mine. I didn't know how to respond to the attention, so I spent the day nodding dumbly like one of those silly little birds that bob their head in and out of a glass of water. Avenel stuck with me between classes, not saying much, just taking it for granted that I expected her to be there. During lunch, she asked where Punky and I were staying, and I told her. That brought a sympathetic look. Once she sympathized with me having to stay at Aunt Queenie's. She'd seen Her Royal Highness at church, staid and stiff as a poker. In art, my classmates were making Indian pottery. There were mostly lopsided bowls and ashtrays, but Marla Daniels' vase was flawless, and she was painting it with geometric designs. When kids teased her about making points with the teacher, she said, "Hey guys, it's my mom's birthday present. You want me to give her a piece of junk?" I remembered the God's Eye, now hanging above the marble vanity in my own personal bathroom at Aunt Queenie's. It looked as out of place as I felt. Listlessly, I rolled my clay into a snake, then wound it around and around to form a bowl. I could have made a nice vase, but it wasn't worth the effort. It wouldn't match anything of Aunt Queenie's, and it would end up hidden in a closet. After class, I went back to my locker and took a quick peek at the swan. I wanted to hold it and turn it and study its every detail, but that would have to wait until school was out. For now, I just have to be content with knowing it was mine. "What's that?" asked a deep voice, causing me to jump. I turned and saw a tree. "Oh, nothing," I said, hastily closing the lid on the box. If Tree saw the swan, he'd want to know where it came from, and I wasn't up to casual conversation. "We heard about everything at church," he said. I figured that. Why was it I hadn't been able to cry at the funeral, and now the tears were pushing at my eyes like a dam ready to break? "How's Punky?" "It must be hard." "It is," I said, not even waiting for him to finish the sentence. I had to get away before the dam collapsed. I'm going to be late for PE class, and Cooper can really be a bear.